Okay, let's get started. So thank you everybody for joining us today. My name is Samantha Putnam. I'm the Associate Director for Alumni Affairs here at UC Santa Barbara. Really excited by the turnout that we've had today and the response to this event series. So thank you to all of you for carving out time to join us. This event sort of came into existence on sort of out of our day of service event. So the past few years, since 2007, we've run an annual event called the UCSB Alumni Day of Service, where we encourage folks to participate in some sort of act of service to give back to our communities. In this time of COVID, we've really had to reimagine this event. And we think that it seems that more than ever, people are looking for ways to positively impact their communities. And so we're launching Day of Service this whole week, ending on Saturday, and really encouraging our alumni to participate in virtual acts of service. And so we thought, how can we contribute to this? And we came up with this concept of exploring civic engagement. And what does that mean? And it's more than just a slogan. And how can we help our alumni and our students and our faculty members and the whole Gaucho community to engage in their community, be a part of positive impact in their community, and really have an influence in a positive way at this time when we're all really struggling to connect with our communities and come together. So we have a really nice lineup of speakers today and tomorrow. And then for those of you who are willing to share your own stories, we're planning an event in December where we really want to look at how this moment in time is impacting our Gaucho community. And so I'll send a follow-up link, and perhaps Michaela can post it here in the chat. And just be willing to share your own stories. How have you been impacted by what's happening right now? All submissions can be confidential, but we'd really like to take those submissions and have an event where we can explore how our Gaucho community is coming together, how we're dealing with the stresses and whatnot. So please do think about submitting a story through there. Just sort of some housekeeping as we go to question and answers. Please use the chat feature. We're going to keep everybody muted, and then I'll pull questions from the chat feature to present to our speakers. So I'm going to introduce now George Thurlow, who's our Assistant Vice Chancellor for Alumni Affairs and Executive Director of the Alumni Association, to introduce our guests. So George, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Welcome, Gauchos. What a wonderful program we have for you today. And I particularly want to thank Samantha for really introducing this idea of Day of Service. This year, we fully anticipate more than 2,000 Gauchos across the country and around the world are going to participate, even in spite of COVID. So our two wonderful speakers, really interesting folks with interesting backgrounds. Ljiljana Coklin is a writing professor here at UCSB, teaches a number of writing courses and writes herself. She's going to be teaching a class on professional writing for global audiences this fall. Her teaching and research interests focus on issues of migrations, border crossings, gender, and citizenship in a contemporary global society and culture. And then she'll be followed by Monica Solorzano, who is our Assistant Director of Government Relations, works very closely with alumni in mobilizing our advocacy efforts, which is going to be a huge, huge item between now and November. She's a graduate of Princeton and has a master's degree from Columbia University. And let me pitch tomorrow, Jeffrey Stewart, Nobel Prize winning faculty member, will be on at noon to further our discussion about civic engagement. So Ljiljana, again, thank you very much for taking time out and for sharing with us some of your ideas about global citizenship.
Well, thank you, George. So I'm really excited to be a part of this day. And I have put together a presentation to talk a little bit about civic engagement and what it means during the time of COVID-19, and how we can rethink and reimagine and readjust some of the activities that we are doing on a regular basis. So I'm gonna go into my, share my screen, get right into this. Let's see. Okay, I'm assuming this works, right? Right, so I have also included some of the beautiful images of our campus in case you haven't been here in a while, so this is a refresher for some of you. So at the end of this presentation, I would really like to hear more from you, what you have been doing, how you have been adjusting some of your service in the community. So let's see. Okay, here we go. So I want to remind you that civic engagement is this huge umbrella term that includes all kinds of things. And if we think about the society, it's usually divided or thought about in terms of three pillars: the government, the markets, and the civic life. And civic engagement is usually connected with the civic life, right? But the scholars are looking into that, and they're really expanding the definition of it, and they're also making inroads into the professional life, the workplace, and also political engagement that is more conventional, but doesn't necessarily mean participating in the political parties themselves. So I decided to kind of divide this civic engagement, this big umbrella term, into 5 more accessible ways, and talk a little bit about the public discourse, about civic awareness, community outreach and advocacy, workplace, and political engagement. So what they have in common is creating the common good for the community that's local or national or bigger in any shape or form. So I'll kind of walk you through these 5 parts and kind of offer a few suggestions and ideas of what you could do. Another thing I want to emphasize here is that all of these activities and suggestions can be done on an individual basis, but also collectively in terms of communities, and you can define these communities in so many different ways. So here we go. Okay, public discourse is the new library if you haven't been to campus in a while. Okay, where is it? Okay. All right, so participating in the public discourse, as you all know, there's a lot of stuff happening, a lot of events happening these days. There are a lot of news also that are hitting us. Technology is facilitating the speed of all these events, and so we are often feeling overwhelmed and kind of almost hopeless and helpless dealing with the onslaught of the information. So if we want to participate in the public discourse, it really, it can mean all sorts of things, but something that is manageable and that is doable that we can all do is kind of bring clarity to the information that is out there. And we can do it individually or on behalf of various communities, including a Gaucho community. So some of the things we could do is we could write opinion pieces, for example, to the editor, open letters, write articles. And so that requires writing skills, and that is exactly what I'm teaching in the civic engagement track of the professional writing minor. So it is important to sort of draw attention to specific things that are happening and also participate in the public debates. It is important also to report and to interpret the events that are happening. There's so much happening to all of us, and you can do it in the more formal way through writing to various publications, or you can do it on Twitter. You can have a Twitter blast or write all sorts of explainers that put things into context. So I think these kinds of activities help us maintain that critical thinking and critical reading spirit that is really, really important. If you want to call it reading between the lines, that's okay as well. But there is a lot of stuff, there's a lot of material that is happening and that we need to sort of vet, and we need to make sense of that. It's also important to provide evidence on the ground, to provide factual information, because as we know, facts are being challenged all kinds of, there are facts, there's alternative facts, and there's fake news. So we need to kind of wade through all of that. And so participating in that kind of dialogue is very helpful, and participating on behalf of our community is also very meaningful and very helpful. The other part would be to sort of develop a voice, and whether individually or collectively on a specific Gaucho chapter. So as a Gaucho chapter, you can sort of have a voice and you can speak together on behalf of specific issues that are happening in your community. And so these could be various updates, or you can also profile community members. I think that's a really lovely skill, again, to introduce people who stand out in the community and whose stories can provide great source of inspiration. So, and these stories can be really different. They can be stories of success. They can be stories of sort of overcoming hardship, the story of service, of leadership or engagement. And so that kind of creates a larger sense of community, that we know who people are, and if we need to contact them, we always have that resource available. So these are some of the ways that are more manageable, if we want to engage in the public discussions and in the public discourse in general. So this is a huge topic, but I think these are some of the manageable activities. So the next, let's see. Okay, it should be. The next one is civic awareness, and this could be also knowledge and literacy. And so in this part, I'm suggesting two different activities. The first one would be various online discussion groups, which you can conduct through Zoom or Skype or Google Hangout. There's so many options you can choose, but these groups can really be focused on sort of maintaining this civic awareness, keeping us all updated, and having a support group where you can discuss things and kind of deepen your knowledge and understanding. And I'm suggesting three different ways to approach these discussion groups. You can organize them around current events, and some of you can provide historical parallels, and it's very helpful to see current events in historical continuity. That also explains them, that makes them more meaningful. You can also provide various kinds of analysis of what's happening, and all of that is really kind of helping us understand and really helping us shape up the action in response to what is happening right now. Another way you can organize online discussions is to focus them on specific topics that are important for your community. And it's very helpful also to gauge the interest of the members of the group, right? To kind of see what they are suggesting, what is important to them, and also bring speakers on a specific topic. And again, that is keeping us all informed. It's also keeping us in touch with each other and hopefully bringing us closer to action. The last suggestion I have for online discussions is having a discussion about around current publications. There's again a lot being published. We cannot all go through all these sources, so it's helpful to kind of share that experience. One of the ways to find what is current is to go to UCSB Reads a link and find what UCSB reads and kind of be in touch with campus that way. But I'm also suggesting here a couple of trending books. Ibram Kendi's How to Be an Anti-Racist, or his earlier book, Stand from the Beginning. Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility, Isabel Wilkerson's book, Caste, the 1916 Project. These are all very, very current titles. Some of them are shorter, like How to Be an Anti-Racist and White Fragility. Or you can focus on the articles, and there are wonderful articles in the Atlantic, the New Yorker, the Rolling Stone, Vanity Fair. So what you could do is you can curate a list, pre-select a list of the things that you would like to discuss. You can also make it more manageable, and if it's a longer book, you can divide it by chapters. You can all talk about it. So I think breaking this information down also keeps you updated on the current thinking, current takes on what is happening. And the topic, the books that I have listed here are all related to the Black Lives Matter movement, which is really getting a lot of attention these days. It also helps to facilitate these discussions, to kind of keep track of what is happening. And another part of kind of deepening the civic awareness is also to keep track of the sources, to document them, and to share resources, to have lists. So if people want to read more on their own, they always have access to that. I'm including here just a little side note in case you want to engage the youth or teenagers. You can do so playfully. Let's say you want to donate some money to a specific cause or specific organization or a person. You can have teenagers or young adults do the research for you, and you can ask them to help you choose an organization. And so that way you're also involving them in the process and really kind of helping them understand what it means to be civically engaged and aware. Okay, so that's sort of a civic awareness. Let me see here. I need to move it down. Okay, the next one is community outreach and advocacy. And I think it's really important to find and connect with local nonprofits, local community organizations, to reach out to community leaders and to identify vulnerable populations. So that having that very clear is very, very helpful. Some of the things you could do is you could organize community drives and delivery. And some of the things are obvious, they have been done, and I'm sure you have all participated in some of them, like food and clothes, but also something that is maybe more current, like devices, older phones and tablets and laptops. A lot of children need that. And so I think that would be a very helpful, very meaningful contribution. You could compile resources on whatever is very relevant to the community, like COVID-19 or fire preparedness or unemployment benefits. A lot of people can benefit from really clear and simplified information and to have access to that information. It is important to be able to present that information in a sort of concise manner. And if you have linguistic skills, make sure you employ them, translate this information, and find a way to share it with the community. And that's why it's so important to be connected with local communities and local leaders, because they can do it very effectively for you. So you can provide a certain part of this process. So you can create flyers, postcards, whatever you think is going to be effective. Another way to sort of be connected is also to be a good listener, and that is you might want to sort of conduct surveys, help conduct surveys to get the community feedback and really amplify the voice of the community. What is it that the community needs? How do they see things? So it's not that we are sort of coming into a community with prescribed recipes and we know exactly that a specific needs. It's important to hear from the community members. What is it that they consider that is important for them? And so we can work collaboratively with other community members. You can post announcements in local media, and the easiest thing is really to fundraise and donate, and it's always helpful and it's always very useful. So I have a couple more about the workplace. And here, I think it's very important that you can also create a meaningful impact through your professional skills and through your workplace. So we don't need to separate the civic sphere where we are civically engaged from the workplace. I'm going to give you just a couple of ideas here. The first one that I like to talk about with my students, and that is aligning the workplace with your values, or redefining the workplace around your values if possible. Younger generations, Generation Z, they have a very strong sense of their values, and they go into the workforce and they look for that connection. Some of us need to kind of find a way to connect what we are doing to civic engagement. I teach that because I think it is really important for young people to know. The other part, the other approach to redefining your workplace is to kind of remember what are the skills that we have. We are all very good at kind of doing the tasks on a regular basis, but we do have so many different skills that we can offer. And at the bottom here, I'm suggesting 2 ways of doing that. You can do it through local organizations, kind of create handouts, kind of similar to what I was saying, collaborating with community organizations. Or you can simply do it through local through public libraries. If you just click on Santa Barbara Public Library, you'll see a whole list of various programs that you can volunteer for, and it's really easy because they organize everything for you. They create a structure, and you can simply work with people individually or in groups. And what I'm listing here are various kinds of things that can be very, very helpful, like website design for some community groups. If you could help them with them, that would be a huge help. Teaching or offering a brief lecture or kind of guidance about financial literacy for the public library, that is hugely impactful. If you have linguistic skills, if you know how to share or teach language, conversational English, that's again very, very helpful. Provide some information about healthcare, computer literacy, cultural literacy, teaching skills, very important, kind of learning how to break down complex information into something that is accessible and manageable. Offering some legal advice and some basics legal advice, again, through the library, through community organization, is very helpful, and it doesn't have to take up too much of your time. And then last but not least, I have just a bit of suggestions about engaging in the political process, and this is doesn't have to be conventional way of being a representative. I'm not talking about that. You can do that, and you know you can do that. But I'm kind of thinking more of a grassroots efforts where you can, again, contact community leaders and local and national representatives. And when you do so, I think it's really, really important that we are able to communicate well, which is why writing comes in very handy. Writing skills to kind of identify and define issues. We can all rant. That's, you know, if we're upset about certain things, but that's not persuasive communication. We really need to break it down, identify and define issues, compose a message that will reach its audience, and also compile persuasive evidence and facts. So being effective in the way we reach our representatives is very helpful. You can host these days Zoom letter writing parties, and also you can have invited guests on specific topics, something again that is important for your community, and that can be your local representative who will say a few words about voter registration if that is a big concern in your community, or elections security. So again, it can be something that is connected to everyday life, but it can also be something that's connected to the political process. You can organize fundraisers, again, always effective. And I have listed a few things that are, again, very important as we head towards November. Check your voter status and mobilize others to do the same thing, to vote and to check their own status. And I'm providing links here for California and for US in general. If you live out of state, participate in phone banking, get some information about potential voters, and become a poll worker. There's a huge need for poll workers. They tend to be over 60 years old, and we need to have polling stations that are equipped with younger people who will be there and who will guide the people to understand the ballot. Being a poll worker also means that you don't have to work just on November 3rd. You might help prior to that day. You can help deal with the ballots after the election day. So there's a lot that needs to be done. I signed up to be a poll worker. I'm not teaching on November 3rd, so I'm available. And I think it's really important. And last and definitely not least, vote. So these are some of the things I put together that might sort of offer some guidance, but I'd really like to hear what you have done. And I think what we all need to do is we want to strive towards building just and more equitable societies and make gauchos proud. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there. And then if you have any comments or questions or your stories, that would be really, really helpful. And I also want to give a shout out to some of the former students who are on this call as well.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Ljiljana. And please do use the chat feature to place your questions in there. And I think the resources that you shared were so incredibly helpful, and we'll be sure to share those out in the follow-up email so everyone has access to those. So while we just wait for any questions that may come in, George, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you have any questions that come to mind after we've listened to Ljiljana's presentation? You're on mute.
No, I think her presentation is a perfect segue into Monica because, let me set up Monica a little bit, and then maybe they can also have a back and forth, because clearly this year's election is going to be really important for the future of our country, but also for the future of California. And so I also want to set up Monica a little bit about how our gauchos, there are several items on the ballot in California that I think are of great interest to gauchos. And so, Ljiljana, thank you for sort of, I've been going back and forth about being a poll worker. So I think you pushed me over the edge, and I'll take a vacation day and go sit there, because I really do think that this is going to be a year when it's really important that we all vote. So maybe do you have questions in the chat?
There are none right now, so please.
Okay.
Anyone
So let's go to Monica, and maybe you can continue the conversation about what do we as gauchos need to be thinking about in terms of the political arena, without getting you and I in trouble.
I think I'll be able to pull that off. So I have a couple slides that Samantha's going to help pull up for me here.
I will go ahead and share my screen.
Great. Oops, that's the end. All right, so as George mentioned, my name is Monica Solorzano, and I'm Assistant Director of Government Relations for UC Santa Barbara. Hopefully the information I share with you today will help implement some of the concepts and the ideas that were illustrated in the excellent first half of this presentation. So again, the topic that I'm going to talk about is how to be an informed constituent, and I'll talk about what it means to be a constituent and all that good stuff as we get a little further into the presentation. So next slide, please. So first, a lot of people on and off campus aren't even aware that the university has an Office of Government Relations. We're a two-person operation, so we're very lean and mean, located on the first floor of Cheadle Hall on campus, although we're not on campus now, but when we are, we're in Cheadle. Every UC campus has a government relations office, although they vary a lot in size and in resources. Next slide, please. So as alumni, you may know or you may not know that oh wait, actually previous, is there one slide? Oh, maybe, oh, sorry, go on, next one. So some of the constituencies that we work with I think it's important for alumni to understand is that we work with folks on the local, state, and federal level of government. And so locally, that would be, I have a couple of examples listed on the slide, the Santa Barbara County Board of Supervisors, Santa Barbara and Goleta City Councils, as well as Chambers of Commerce. These are all entities that interact with the university on a regular basis. In terms of state representation, we work with State Senator Hannah-Beth Jackson, who is going to be terming out, so we're going to have somebody new in that role. Assembly members Monique Limon, Jackie Irwin, and Jordan Cunningham. And then federally, we work very closely with Congressmember Salud Carbajal, who is also an alum of UCSB, and then also Julia Brownlee, who represents a little bit more of the southern area here. We work with our senators, so Dianne Feinstein and Kamala Harris, and then with a lot of different staff out in Sacramento and in DC that work on different committees and for different agencies that are important to university. Next slide. So the Office of the President, which is something that people may or may not know this, they have branches in Sacramento and in Washington, D.C. So UCOP does have committed staffs of analysts who work on these types of issues. And so they have physical offices in Sacramento and in D.C. And myself and my director, we go out in non-COVID times. We go out to those offices several times a year. We bring faculty, students, and alumni to advocate in person in these capitals. Next slide. Let's see. The next slide. Okay, how to be a constituent. All right. So before I get into the nitty gritty of advocacy, I think it's important that everybody understands, how to be a constituent, what a constituent is. You may know this already, but in case you don't, I'll just mention. So a constituent, basically somebody who lives in an area that's represented by an elected official. So by this definition, all of us are multiple, are constituents of multiple offices, multiple levels. We're all constituents of the President of the United States, then, our senators in our states, all the way down to our city council members. So we are all constituents on a lot of different levels, which gives us a lot of different avenues to engage these folks. And one of your strongest avenues for advocacy is in your role as a constituent, for the very simple and powerful reason that your representative relies on your vote. So they need to hear from you, and generally they want to hear from you because they want to be able to continue to serve in their capacity. And it's exciting to think about, contacting some of the more popular or dynamic politicians who you might see on CNN and in the public eye. It's really your representatives, your local representatives or statewide, who most want and need to hear from you. So that's why on this slide, I've included links to how to find your representative, both on the state and on the federal level. And these links will also give you the office information for these folks. So a lot of times people might not know, but all you need to do is enter in usually your street address, sometimes just your zip code, and it will it'll pop up all of the different folks who represent you. Next slide. So there's a lot of different ways to reach out. Ljiljana mentioned some of them, but in terms of the work that my office does, we really try to foster in person whenever possible. But now a lot of it is phone, writing, snail mail, not as common anymore, but some people are still comfortable with that. And then email and social media. One of the things, obviously, about this time with COVID is that legislators are more online than ever before. So I think it gives people more access than they might have had in the past, because there just is no room for those in-person meetings. So the staff of these legislative offices, they're looking to receive these emails, these tweets, these Facebook posts a little bit more than maybe they had in the past. Next slide, please. So in terms of what to say, so this is where sometimes people can get stuck in terms of being an advocate and trying to get their voice heard. So, I think that what's helpful I put some different bullet points here about what you can do either when you're making a phone call, sending an email, or using social media. So, you can kind of look these over at your leisure maybe later. I know you're going to be getting these slides, but the idea is really to define what it is that is your priority, and then find a way to communicate it in a way that is engaging. So, provide personal anecdotes to illustrate whatever you're asking the politician to do. Be polite, even if you're getting in touch to lodge a concern or complaint. Sometimes people can be frustrated when the representatives have political views that are opposite of theirs, right? And so maybe they feel like it's not useful or helpful for them to reach out, but it's important to do so, even if you feel like it's not going to make a difference, because you do have these different levels of folks that you can reach out to. And no matter what, they should know what their constituents are thinking, whether they agree with it or not. In terms of social media, it's helpful, trying to time maybe a tweet or a Facebook post in relation to maybe an event that the legislator is doing. If they just came out with a press release on something, made an announcement, that's usually a good time to send that tweet and really get a reaction from the legislator or staff. And then obviously, you can look at their recent tweets or Facebook postings or on their official websites for their own topics of interest, and then respond to those specifically, because the more specific you can get, the more you'll be likely to get a response. Next slide, please. So how to say it. This is one of the I think maybe hidden gems out there for folks who want to advocate on behalf of UC. So I had mentioned earlier that the Office of the President has both a state and federal government relations offices. So again, there are links through these sites that I put here, and what you'll find are very simplified talking points, fact sheets, letters from the former UC president to different congressional groups and committees, analysis of the state budget. They have maps where you could look and see, what you see in your district, like wherever you might live. You can see what your local UC's impacts are in your district. And this is really to give you the examples, the guidance to put whatever your priorities are in the context of either UC or higher ed, or even just to see what it's like to get a script for making a phone call or a script for an email. All of those resources are there, and they're through these different sites here. So I think that's something that's really valuable for people to have when they think they want to reach out, but they don't know how to say it or where to direct it. So hopefully that's something that can empower people too, is having the access to this type of information. Next slide. And then, one of the best ways to do this is through the University of California Advocacy Network, which has the very catchy acronym of UCAN. And so the link is right there. So hopefully you guys are already signed up for this, but if you're not, I would really encourage it, because it's a good way to be engaged in a UC-wide effort that brings together advocates from all the campuses. It's, anybody can sign up, alumni, students, faculty, staff, friend of UC. And what will happen is you'll get maybe once or twice a month outreach from the network inviting you to participate in a campaign. And these campaigns involve the methods that I mentioned in my previous slides, either tweeting, email, calling, but it's around a specific issue. So in the past, some of the issues have been to advocate for DACA students, for federal funding for student aid, for federal funding for COVID-19 related research. And so there's a couple of different campaigns per year, and you can be as involved or as much or as little as you'd like. But again, this gives you sort of that focus, that those guidelines, so that you can participate even if you're not quite sure how to do so. So I encourage you to go to that site, sign up, and just explore it. There's a lot of information there as well, and so you can educate yourself on the issues that are priorities for the university and for higher ed right now. Next slide. So other UC advocacy groups that our office works with, they're the UC Student Ambassadors. And so that's a relatively new program where students, undergrads from all 10 campuses can apply, and then a handful are selected to work closely with the Office of the President throughout the year on advocacy. So, trying to educate students who are really involved, who want to be more involved with the process. They get to polish up those skills on their own behalf. We also we work with the Alumni Advocacy Committee, run through the Alumni Center here, and so my director and I will meet with them several times a year and talk about how the UCSB alumni can be more active on different issues that come up. UCAN advocates, those are the ones I mentioned, and then UC faculty, staff, and students. And one of my favorite parts about my job is really, again, during normal times, is being able to meet with grad students, with undergrads, with faculty, with staff, and to get their own personal anecdotes about how they're impacted by these issues that come up in legislation or that come up, in funding bills, and then be able to take these people, sometimes in person, sometimes just by taking their stories, to our legislators' offices in Sacramento and DC to let them know, that UC students, UC alumni, UC faculty, they are impacted in a real way by these different issues that are going on right now. Next slide. So these are the two contact folks for UC Santa Barbara Government Relations. It's myself and my director, Kirsten Deschler. We're very accessible through email. So if anybody has any questions, you want to follow up, get more information about what we do, find ways to be active, please feel free to get in touch. Like I said, we're a small team, so we sometimes have to prioritize in terms of how we engage, but we're very much locked in with the priorities of the Alumni Association. So next slide. Okay, and so if anyone has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Oops. Thank you, Monica. So I'm just going to quickly so we have a question here. With so many conversations happening over social media, curious on thoughts on what to do when you see posts that have wrongful information. Is it best to ignore or add oxygen to inflammatory posts on social media when the goal is having conversations? So that's probably one for you, Ljiljana.
Am I muted? I'm not. Okay, how should I put it? So I think all facts come packaged and so interpretation or different kinds of spins that we want to give to certain facts. And I think it is important to fact check. So you might want to kind of divorce the two. You might want to provide facts without engaging sort of in something that might take you off of the topic. So I think it is, even if you just provide facts and kind of stand firmly on that is some sort of corrective action that is necessary. The rest can be, like I said, very inflammatory and it's draining. It can often be counterproductive. So I think I'd say provide facts for sure. The rest is up to you to see how far you can go with, and if the opinions are so diverse, it's very difficult to have any kind of dialogue. So if there is a possibility of a common ground, to have some kind of discussion, to have some kind of ability to explain things, then engage. Otherwise, I think it can be a very frustrating experience. So, but I would say definitely say fact check and provide whatever facts you have and stand behind. That is important.
Thank you.
And I would add, to engage strategically too, right? You might not want to be jumping in on some of the comments on YouTube that are just from anonymous people, although that can be useful too. But if it's maybe your legislator who's tweeting about something, taking a stand on something that you have information about, then sending that information to that legislator or to that leader in the community could be more helpful, just so that you're not kind of scattershot, though there is, like I said, there is advantages to that in that you're getting your voice out there too. So it really is up to you how strategic you want to be.
Thank you. And that question was from Leslie Klonoff, who's a member of our Alumni Board of Directors. So thank you, Leslie. And we've got a good showing from the Alumni Board today. So Scott Carper also has a question. Many of our board members have been helping to host Zoom networking meetings and sessions for UCSB students and alumni. It seems like the hot topic of right now is how to best use your time during COVID. You mentioned several areas that are interesting. Any suggestions on what to focus on during these meetings, trying to provide interesting content or reasons to join these meetings?
So then it's regarding these Zoom meetings between students and...
So it's alumni sort of networking sessions. So provide how to provide interesting content within these networking sessions when you want to facilitate conversation, but how to use those gatherings for providing positive content.
Well, I would actually say even taking a look at the UCAN website and looking at some of the campaigns that they're doing. Generally, the UCAN network only runs campaigns on big issues and issues that really impact UC, right? So that could just kind of skimming through that website, seeing what past campaigns they've done can be helpful in seeing what people are being active on right now, because yeah, they generally will choose things that would interest students and alumni to begin with. So it could be, they could provide a good jumping off point.
Samantha,
Yes.
can I
Yes, please do.
follow up with Monica? So as an intro to this, Monica and I both know that, as do several others on this call, that state employees cannot get involved in advocacy for specific pieces of legislation or ballot measures. This is the same as at the federal level. The federal level has the Hatch Act, which says that federal officials can't use public property and or resources to run campaigns. So having said that, we have two ballot measures that the regents of the university have endorsed. And so I assume those are of import. So while you gingerly navigate, we are allowed to educate on issues facing the voters. Can you give us a little pre-education on these two ballot measures that the regents feel are really important to citizens of California?
Well, I'll talk a little bit about what you had said first about limitations to advocacy, and really what one of the things that our office does deal with is trying to make sure that we educate faculty and students and staff and anybody affiliated with UC that, you know, it's absolutely you can advocate for whatever, you can say whatever you would like, right, to support or to oppose the legislation, but it's important to do it as a private citizen as opposed to identifying yourself as, you know, Monica Solorzano, as Assistant Director of Government Relations at UCSB. I strongly, that wouldn't pass muster. But I mean, I could say it, you know, as a private citizen, these are my thoughts, and it's really because we're a public institution. So, you know, there have been some issues where we've had pushback from faculty, understandably, who want to be able to speak about these things, you know, from their area of expertise, with their title, but it's just something that we have to adhere to. And so with ballot measures, that does come up, you know, every time there are measures that are significant to the university. We have to be careful that we can provide information to legislative offices. We can, as long as it's even-handed, you know, we can talk about what the ballot measure would do, what it might mean to UC, but beyond that, it can be a very sticky situation in going forward. And so I mean, and that's one of the services our office provides, is helping people figure out how to contact whoever they they want or need to contact about those types of issues, whether it's legislation, ballot measures, and so forth.
So are two ballot measures that the regents, or do you feel comfortable in at least identifying those two, what those ballot measures are?
Go ahead. No, I mean, please go ahead. Go. Yeah.
Oh, she's gonna put me on the spot. Okay, so the two ballot measures, I mean, I would be remiss if we're doing civic engagement and we didn't at least mention the fact that there's two ballot measures that the regents and clearly the University of California will be impacted by. The first one's Prop 14, which is the renewal of stem cells research. There was a ballot measure a few years back that raised billions of dollars to do stem cell research. Much of that research ended up being taking place at UC San Francisco. That money is now gone. There's a new ballot measure to restore that funding and to continue the stem cell research. And everybody, I think, here on this call understands that stem cell research is obviously could potentially be the answer to many, many human illnesses and disease. The second ballot measure is Prop 16, which would repeal Proposition 209, and it has to do with affirmative action and the ability of the University of California to use affirmative action in its many, many activities, from admissions to hiring. So those are the two ballot measures that the regents have endorsed.
Thank you. So we have a couple of other questions here. Monica, I think this one's for you. What's the best avenue for advocating when your elected officials are not allowed to vote? So this is a question from someone in DC, and also curious about those folks living in Puerto Rico and Guam and other territories.
Yeah, I mean, well, that one of the things that I also had wanted to mention is you definitely can also reach out in a productive way to people that are not your direct representatives. You just have to find the avenue of connection with them. So, for example, you know, if you live in DC but you went to, you know, UCSB, or you went to a university in New Jersey or New York, I mean, you can reach out in that capacity to legislators as well if you want to have your voice be heard on a topic when you don't have somebody who's going to be able to vote on it. I would also, you know, I would look at different levels of government, right? Is there somebody locally, you know, is there, you know, again, the city council, the county supervisor level, some people, you know, if they live in DC especially, they've relocated from somewhere. So who is the legislator from where you grew up, or where, so there are different ways, I think, to look for legislators that you can contact and say, you know, in my capacity as somebody, you know, I grew up in XYZ, or I went to school in XYZ, and this is how I feel about this issue, and it's important to me, and this is how it's impacted my life, or what have you. So that's what I would say. You can get creative in finding ways that tie you to different legislative offices. Although, you know, they will always listen to constituents first. So that's why you want to go as close as you can to wherever you vote, just because they won't turn you away.
So Monica, can I don't mean to butt in, but you keep raising some interesting. So this year in California, vote by mail. Can you kind of walk us through the whole voter registration, then absentee versus vote by mail, and then what's going on in California? And do we who are on this chat need to know anything different from we've had in previous years regarding California's voting rules?
Yeah, well, I think that one of the most important things, and I think there was a part of this in Ljiljana's slide, was there's a way to make sure that you are in fact registered, because, you know, with California, vote by mail is an option. It's not in all the states. In some states you have to request it. In some states, with California though, I mean, I think that it's something, I mean, if I remember correctly, that it's something that's available statewide. And I'm not sure, Ljiljana, if you have any background on that as well, but I think making sure that you're registered, you can check on that. And then once you do that, in Santa Barbara County, for example, you'll get a postcard that basically says this is to confirm whether or not you opt to vote by mail or not, and then you can return that, and you can always also vote in person too. So I think you have those two options that are pretty strong, but the most important thing is to make sure that you are registered, and that you're getting that ballot wherever you're registered. So if you registered, you know, with students, you know, sometimes they'll register where their parents live, right? So the ballot's going to go to their parents' house. It's not going to go to where they might be living closer to campus in non-COVID time. Hopefully they're not living too close to campus right now. But what would you add, Ljiljana?
I agree. I think I provided a link just for California, and you need to enter your zip code, and it's going to come up whether you're registered or not already. If not, you have to get on it. It's also important for people who are evacuated, who are moving away, for students who are also between homes. So I think it's really important to do it, to do that kind of check before November 3rd. You can see that I posted in the chat some links for participating, encouraging voting, especially in battleground states, and I included those that are nonpartisan links. So you can kind of work through that as well, and work on behalf of these organizations as well, and they can help you, direct you how you can actually mobilize those voters as well. It is all possible. So I think like for the most part, it is done through those battleground states, because that's where the decision will be made.
Thank you. And then we just have one last question as we're coming to the top of the hour. This Susan here says she gets a lot of emails from political figures with surveys, and it seems to be that maybe it's just a way to ask for money. Do the surveys actually have any effect, and are they transmitted to decision makers?
Well, I can speak. So my first job out of college, I was a staff assistant for a congressman in DC. So one of my jobs as one of the lower level folks in the office was to compile those results that we would get from surveys. So I can say at least, way back then, yeah, I think that they do tally those responses. And what they do with the surveys specifically is that's helping them identify what topics are most important to their constituents. And you're right, it always is linked into donating, but I believe for most of them, you can also just submit the survey without donating. And if that's the case, I would do it, especially if it's coming from the members, it's from like an official, email from the members' office or from their staff, because that is another way to let them tally up the kind of the tick marks for, what's, is it environment, is it immigration, is it, you want them to know what things are most important to you. So yeah, don't feel like you need to donate, but do know that yes, the staff do look at those results, and they take it into consideration when they plan their events and their press releases and all that type of thing.
Did you want to add anything to that, Ljiljana?
I think, well, I'm glad Monica covered the survey part, but I was on a call recently and Buttigieg was involved and whatnot. And the bottom line was, if you can donate, because everything counts. And another thing, if you want to be involved with voters registration, you can donate to the organizations that fight voter suppression. So that's another way to sort of connect the two things, but donations are helpful and meaningful, and they go a long way. So
thank you. We're at the top of the hour, and I want to be mindful of everybody's time. Thank you so much for joining us on this Tuesday following a holiday. Hopefully it's a little bit easier to jump in on a Zoom than to get up and get going on an event on one of these days. But thank you so much to Monica and to Ljiljana and to all of our alumni board members who've been present today, and to George Thurlow. And please do join us tomorrow for more interesting discussion under the topic of civic engagement. Well, we're really exploring, the Black Lives Matter movement a little bit deeply, and just looking at how we as a whole society can really imagine a multicultural community and what part we can all play in that. And it's not enough to just say, hey, I'm not Karen, it's not me. How can we really engage in the process? So as George mentioned, that discussion will be led by Dr. Jeffrey Stewart. We will send a follow-up email with slide decks and links and whatnot. Please do join us tomorrow, and please, hopefully this counts as your participation in Day of Service, but if you feel inspired to go out and do something else based off today's conversation, please let us know and give us some feedback, and we'll send out a little survey too, because surveys do count, and we do read those surveys, and we want your feedback. So thank you so much, everybody, and hopefully we'll see a number of you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye.